So in some ways, it seems to me, for someone who doesn't have an expertise in this, but let me just try this out on you and see if this works. It's kind of remembering our indigenous brothers and sisters through science to reconnect in a way that brings us back. Is that close?
Yes. In a very antiseptic way.
Yeah.
And just depending upon your own nature, will you then create with it and see how it comes out and expresses itself within you.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Because that is so true, right? Knowledge, especially today with artificial intelligence, is becoming a commodity, right? So it's how you consume your own spirit into the information, and that's a perfect example, right?
And being armed with this new knowledge and looking at cemetery next door, which was covered in evergreen, which I was very happy about the first 2 years, because I didn't want to know that it was there. And it was a nice buffer to the street for sound, that I realized I was living next door to a natural disaster. And when you're living right next door to a natural disaster, when you're armed with knowledge, you can't keep turning your head away.
A natural disaster for what reason?
Invasive vegetation was taking over the land, to the point where you couldn't even walk into the cemetery. And so I gathered my neighbors, and it took us about 3 months on our hands and knees, removing that privet. And literally within 3 months, a sea of Engelmann daisies, just huge drift, showcased itself that was previously buried because it couldn't receive the light of day. Thank you. Exactly. And the Blackland prairie started to express itself in a way that I realized, oh my God, we're living next door to not only a remnant historic cemetery, but a remnant Blackland prairie. And what I've learned through understanding and appreciating what I had next door now is that these seed banks that are left dormant and buried over time because of this natural disaster, in a way protected the vegetation, the seed banks below. So once we removed that vegetation that was invasive.
So seed banks are just like dormant potential of the species that exists.
Exactly. Before man came to this area.
Interesting. So it just kind of hangs out and says, you know, I'm here if you want me.
Exactly. And then during this time of restoration, when we're taking out the privet, a woman by the name of Suzanne Starling, a historian, stopped and said, thank you so much for taking care of the cemetery. Back in the 80s, I stopped a plot of land from development because a home was about to be built on it. And she handed me the book, Land is the Cry, which is about the story of Warren Angus Ferris, who lived homesteaded in the neighborhood, had 640 acres, and that cemetery was first started when his 2-year-old son died, and then he opened it to the local community, which were far and few between, because he happened to be the first person to survey all of Texas all of Dallas before Dallas was a city.
When it was surveyed, just general survey.
General survey to lay out the lines for the city of Dallas.
Nice. Wow.
And nobody knows who he is. That's what is a chronic problem. We're so disconnected from nature, and we're so disconnected from those who've come before us that don't necessarily have to be our ancestors, but to appreciate whose shoulders we stand on in this environment that we are today.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation of who aren't our ancestors, right?
Exactly. So
the deep level, you're connecting all relations.
Exactly. And so as a creative, I'm a photographer, was a photographer by trade, and now retired. I realized I had an aha moment where here we have two entities that usually don't coexist, that are separate. Cultural history and natural history. And hardly do they ever come together. And I realized this is how we can cast a wider net of building more interest. Because if we're always talking to the same crowd who's drunk the Kool-Aid about nature, we're not going to gain a new audience to educate them about the importance of land preservation and vice versa. And I happen to be one of those that didn't care about the local culture until Suzanne Stone gave me the book, and I realized how valuable this man was, and this story is rich and needs to be told.